For decades, whenever you thought of stability in Europe, you thought of Germany. It was the bedrock, right? But now, something is seriously changing, and it's happening fast. So let's get right into it and try to understand this tectonic shift that's happening right in the heart of the continent. So, the big question on everyone's mind is why? And why now? What is going on that's taking a party that was once on the fringes and pushing it smack into the mainstream? I mean, we're talking about something that's reshaping Germany's entire political identity. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. All right, so first up, let's set the stage, because to really get how big a deal this is, you got to understand where Germany's been, politically speaking. I mean, for more than 60 years, German politics was pretty predictable. It was a story of moderation, really. You had two big parties in the center calling the shots. But then, 2015 happened, the refugee crisis. And that was a huge catalyst for change. You fast forward to today, and the alternative for Germany, the AfD, they've gone from being a fringe group to a major, major political force. And just look at these numbers. This is what's really wild, the speed of this change. You can see they had a little dip back in 2021, but since then, their support has more than doubled. We're talking about them pulling around 22% nationally now. So, this isn't just a few angry people making a statement anymore. This is a huge and growing part of the German electorate. Okay, so what is really driving these numbers? It's never just one thing, right? It's complicated. So let's start peeling back the layers here and get to the heart of what people are feeling, the emotions and anxieties that are fueling this whole thing. If you had to pick just one word to describe what so many of these voters are feeling, it's got to be this one: disillusionment. It's this really powerful gut punch of a feeling like you've been ignored, left behind, and just plain disappointed by the people in charge, who seem like they're living on a different planet from you and your daily struggles. And that feeling, it's summed up perfectly in this quote you hear over and over again, especially when you get out of the big cities. It's this cry of frustration, really, from people who feel like all the jobs, all the opportunities are being sucked into the big urban centers, while their own towns are just struggling to keep the lights on. And let's be clear, those struggles are absolutely real. I mean, Germany, right? The powerhouse of Europe, it's been hit hard. You've got soaring inflation, crazy high energy costs, made even worse by the war in Ukraine, and all of that is putting a massive squeeze on families. When you get to a point where people are actually having to choose between heating their homes or buying groceries, well, you can bet their trust in the government's ability to manage the economy just hits rock bottom. And that brings us to this, a really pivotal moment. Just 3 little words from then-Chancellor Angela Merkel back in 2015 during the height of the refugee crisis. We can do this. It was meant as a statement of hope and humanitarian strength, but wow, did it open up a deep, deep division in German society that's still there today. So on one hand, you had the official government stance, a humanitarian welcome, an opportunity for Germany. But on the other side, you had this growing anxiety bubbling up among a lot of people. They were worried about practical things, like the strain on schools and housing. But there was also this deeper fear about culture, about losing their national identity. And the AfD, they saw that anxiety and absolutely capitalized on it, making immigration the core of their entire message. But here's the thing. To really understand the AfD's rise, you can't just look at recent events. You have to look at Germany's map and its history, because the story in the eastern part of the country is completely different from the story in the west. See, for a lot of people in what used to be East Germany, the promises that came with reunification, we're talking over 30 years ago now, they just never really came true. There's this persistent, nagging feeling of being treated like a second-class citizen. And that has created this deep, deep well of resentment, not just against the politicians in Berlin, but against the entire Western establishment. And wow, this chart right here just lays it all out. It's shockingly clear. Look at that. Support for the AfD in the East is nearly double what it is in the West. This isn't just about a different political opinion. This is decades of pent-up frustration just exploding at the ballot box. So, where does this all lead? What does it mean for the future? Well, here's the key thing to remember. This isn't just a German story anymore. The ripple effects from this are already being felt all across Europe. And one of the biggest things pouring gasoline on this fire is social media.
You have these far-right movements that have become incredibly savvy on platforms like TikTok and Telegram. They can completely bypass traditional news outlets and pump out this emotional, super relatable content that goes straight to voters. This is where the new narratives are being built, and frankly, where misinformation can just spread like wildfire, because it's designed to tap right into those fears and frustrations we were just talking about.
And like I said, Germany isn't an island. This political shift isn't happening in a vacuum. You're seeing a very similar tide of right-wing sentiment rising all over Europe. Look at France, Italy, the Netherlands, Austria. It's a pattern. And that's why what happens in Germany, Europe's biggest economy, is being watched so closely by everyone. The end result of all this? Well, it's the political center. The very thing that was Germany's greatest strength for decades, it's cracking. It's crumbling. The traditional mainstream parties are struggling to work together. They can't form stable governments like they used to, and that creates a power vacuum. And you can bet the opposition forces are more than happy to rush in and fill it. So all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. Because this isn't really just about politics or election results anymore, is it? This goes deeper. It's about the fundamental fabric of a society. In an age that feels so defined by fear and frustration, the biggest challenge for Germany, and maybe for all of us, is how on earth do you even begin to rebuild trust?